Discover the incredible journey of a poor teacher who transformed into a millionaire's heartfelt dream. Sarah sank into her worn-out desk chair, the weight of the world pressing down on her like a heavy fog. Each day at Crestview High had turned into a battle, not just for her students' engagement, but for her very sense of purpose. In a town that equated success with test scores, she felt invisible, a mere shadow amid the suffocating expectations. Watching her students' eyes glaze over during her lessons, she couldn't help but fear their potential slipping away, their dreams dwindling while she fought to keep her own afloat. Teaching science should have been a joy, but instead, it felt like an uphill climb. She clocked in long hours, teaching, grading, and adapting mind-numbing standardized tests that stifled creativity. The resentment bubbled inside her like a cauldron about to boil over. Driven by a desperation to provide for her elderly father, who had sacrificed everything for her education, Sarah juggled multiple jobs, leaving no time to consider her own dreams. Her father's frail figure and stooped shoulders reminded her of the burden she carried, the weight of loyalty and love intertwined with responsibility. In moments of stillness, the thought struck, could she break free from this educational monotony? A flicker of ambition sparked within her as she desperately searched for a way to connect with her students. What if she could create an innovative online curriculum that captured their attention? The thought tantalized her, making her heart race with both excitement and fear. Would anyone take her seriously? In this rundown town, dreaming big typically earned a swift kick back to reality. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With renewed determination, Sarah poured herself into her project, surrendering hours to crafting engaging materials that spoke to her students' realities. But just as she felt herself gaining momentum, a slick local tech entrepreneur appeared, expressing interest in her curriculum. Instead of hope, unease gripped her heart. Could she trust him? In her naivete, she handed over her ideas, believing this would usher her dreams into existence. Yet, the moment he betrayed her trust, siphoning her innovations as if they were his own, a silent scream echoed within her. How could someone rise at her expense? His smirk haunted her thoughts, the betrayal like a ghost that chilled her resolve. In that moment, she confronted the deepest fear lurking within. Could she achieve success and remain true to the heart of her community? Grief consumed her as she realized the tangled web of her ambitions threatened to unravel the very loyalty she held dear. Each day in the classroom became a battlefield, not just against apathy, but against her own internal strife, the duality of her roots pulling her back while her dreams begged her to break free. With each lesson she delivered, the tension became palpable. What if her quest for recognition unraveled the fabric of what grounded her? The stakes were high, and every passing moment forced Sarah to wrestle with her resolve. Could she redefine success without sacrificing the community that had shaped her? The painful truth loomed, leaving only question marks where certainty once lay. Would she abandon everything she held dear for an elusive promise? The shadows of betrayal and doubt lingered, tightening their grip around her heart. The cacophony of the school bell snapped Sarah back to the present, the reverberation piercing through her swirling thoughts. Students poured into the classroom, some laughing, others groaning about homework. For a moment, she watched them, an array of personalities shining through their youthful faces. It was the spark in their eyes, the undeniable potential, that ignited a flicker of determination within her, a primal urge to take back control of her narrative. As she scribbled the lesson objective on the board, a shift occurred inside her. For years, she had been the passive recipient of frustration, but in that instant, she resolved to become an active agent of change in her own life. The betrayal she suffered would not define her path, it would instead fuel her fire. She recalled her earlier ambition to create an innovative curriculum, a revelation that accompanied a renewed sense of urgency. A plan began to crystallize in her mind, a way to harness her skills and experiences into an entrepreneurial venture that would serve both her students and herself. After the last bell rang, she lingered in the empty classroom, the flickering neon lights buzzing overhead. Inspiration surged, and she grabbed her phone, quickly typing notes into a digital notebook. Each idea propelled her further away from self-doubt. Envisioning her curriculum transformed into a captivating online platform, she imagined kids across Crestview engaged in interactive lessons that sparked curiosity, lessons designed to ignite passion rather than fear. In that moment, she was no longer just a teacher. She was an innovator, but the thought of actualizing this vision was daunting. The fear of failure clawed at the edges of her resolve. Could she juggle this new undertaking alongside her responsibilities? The whisper of doubt returned, dangerous, invasive, but she countered it with determination. Her father's sacrifices echoed in her heart. Every late-night work session, every moment he had spent to afford her education had never been for mediocrity. He had believed in her potential, even when she struggled to believe in it herself. The next day, her enthusiasm seeped into her lessons. Encouraged by the energy radiating from her students, she began to weave elements of her burgeoning online curriculum into the traditional classroom setting. Questions transformed into discussions, projects morphed into collaborative explorations. In her students' faces, she found the reflection of her aspirations, a mutual quest for discovery illuminated by a shared sense of purpose. Nevertheless, self-doubt was relentless. At night, Sarah often lay awake, wondering if her ideas were good enough to compete in a world dominated by established educational platforms. Reciting motivational quotes only offered temporary consolation. It was becoming painfully clear that she needed more than just willpower. She needed mentorship and resources. The following week, she attended a local entrepreneurial workshop, driven by a desire to build a network and gain insights from people who had walked this path. As she listened to stories of failure transformed into success, hope blossomed within her. The workshop leader's words struck a chord, emphasizing the importance of resilience. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's part of it, he declared, igniting a fire inside her. Emboldened by the experience, Sarah began reaching out to contacts within her network. She loitered over coffee with a former student who had become a tech developer, sharing her vision and soon realizing she wasn't alone in her entrepreneurial undertaking. Conversations flowed, ideas expanded, and with each exchange, a sense of partnership formed. But just as plans began to materialize, an unexpected message arrived, a familiar name haunting her screen. The tech entrepreneur, the one who had betrayed her, had resurfaced, eager to reconnect. Seething frustrations bubbled to the surface, her trust fundamentally shattered. As Sarah stared at the words glowing on her phone, an agonizing decision loomed before her. Could she confront him about the past and find clarity, or would this be the moment she left behind what no longer served her? The pulsing rhythm of her heart quickened, uncertainty merging with the urgency to define her future. Would she muster the courage to confront the specter of her past and transform it into a learning experience? The question lingered, challenging her to face not only her fear of confrontation, but also the deeper fear of being vulnerable at a crossroads that could define the path ahead. Sarah's fingers hovered over the screen, uncertainty coiling in her stomach. The message from Derek, the man who had shattered her sense of security, lingered on her mind like a bitter aftertaste. For a fleeting moment, vulnerability threatened to wash over her. She thought about how this moment was not merely a remnant of the past, but rather a crossroads, an opportunity to pivot toward greater self-empowerment or to remain shackled by fear. With a deep breath, she set the phone down and poured herself a cup of coffee. The rich aroma flooded her senses, invigorating her as she reconsidered her options. Each sip fueled her resolve to engage in difficult conversations rather than dodge them. Turning to face the challenges ahead meant reclaiming her narrative, and she couldn't let the ache of resentment win. Still, the heart of the matter lay not only in her dialogue with Derek, but in addressing her own internal landscape. What did she truly want from this interaction? Clarity? Closure? Or perhaps a chance to voice her hurt and demand accountability, or maybe even forgiveness? Each question pinned her in place, and it was not until she pulled out her notebook that clarity began to dawn. She began to draft the responses she wished to voice, pouring out her thoughts like a cathartic release. Gone were any remnants of self-derision or hesitance. She outlined not only how he had hurt her, but also what she had learned in the years that followed. Words flowed through the pen as she wrote about resilience, courage, and the transformation of pain into purpose. After hours of reflection, Sarah hit send, her heart racing as her message disappeared into the ether. This time, there was no apprehension, only a steady uplift of confidence as she took a leap into vulnerability. In the days that followed, she found herself increasingly preoccupied with her online curriculum, mapping out content while reflecting on the discussions she had during the entrepreneurial workshop. Ideas collided in remarkable ways, reshaping how she envisioned her platform. It wasn't just a collection of lessons. It was a sanctuary of creativity, a space where young minds could explore and challenge the conventional pathways of learning. Every pixel she designed, every interactive lesson plan she crafted, felt like a direct rebuttal to her old fears. Dialogue with her tech-savvy former student, Ryan, became a consistent workspace for innovation. Together, they brainstormed user-friendly interfaces and interactive options that would turn learning into an adventure. The frantic energy of possibility propelled her forward. She was not merely a teacher, but the architect of an educational revolution. The thought invigorated her deeply, pushing her through each challenge. However, amid this creative fervor, the fracture between her and Derek continued to pulse in the background. His response loomed over her like a specter, neither dispatch nor resolution materializing from his silence. Yet as weeks slipped by, she found her resolve solidifying. She refused to let his presence. It faded from a dagger-esque cut to a distant shadow dictate her self-worth or career ambitions. Then, on a particularly intense day of brainstorming, the notification popped up. It was Derek. Her heart lurched, raw emotions sizzling with intensity. What had he to say? Would he be remorseful, defensive, or perhaps indifferent? As she opened the message, her breath caught in her throat. The words drew her in even as the stakes slowly ratcheted up. Confrontation or acceptance, vulnerability or dismissal. The enormity of the moment washed over her, amplifying the resolve she had painstakingly built. Would she yield to fear or embrace the transformative potential of this exchange? It wasn't just about closure. It was about ownership of her narrative as she stood at a pivotal junction in her life. The time had come to face the truth that had evaded her for too long. Seizing that moment could change not just how she perceived him, but how she perceived herself. And as the screen glowed back at her, the words awaited her attention, a promise of clarity entwined with the prospect of disruption. The critical juncture had arrived. She had a choice to make that could reverberate throughout her newfound journey. As she read through Derek's message, the carefully crafted words felt loaded, almost palpable, like the tension crackling in the air. He expressed remorse, but there was something about it that struck her as performative, a veneer designed to elicit pity rather than convey genuine understanding. Anger flared inside her, competing with the echoes of her former feelings for him. She crossed her arms as if to physically ward off the waves of emotion crashing over her. "I'm sorry for the pain I caused," he had written, "but I never meant for it to go that far." Pain. The word hung in the air like a shadow, reminding her of the countless nights she had spent wrestling with her thoughts, parsing through memories for clues on where it had all gone wrong. More than a simple apology, she wanted acknowledgement of the choices that led to her suffering, not just a brushstroke of regret over the larger canvas of their tumultuous history. Sarah's response began to take shape, each keystroke infused with the fire of her newfound strength. It was time to confront the past, to articulate her truth with clear conviction. First drafts unspooled in a torrent of honesty, capturing the profound sense of betrayal and loss. Yet, she also began to weave in the threads of what she had learned during her transformative journey. Realizing that her pain had once darkened her outlook, she now saw it as fuel for growth. "Your actions had repercussions far beyond what you may think," she typed, the click of her keyboard echoing her determination. "But I've learned that my worth isn't defined by your choices." Each word was imbued with accountability not just towards Derek, but towards herself. Sarah snapped the laptop shut, feeling both exhilarated and drained. This was no longer merely about Derek and the chapter he represented in her life. This was about inverting her narrative from victimhood to empowerment. In the following days, she immersed herself more deeply in her curriculum. Ideas cascaded like water from a fresh spring as she envisioned bringing empowerment concepts into her lessons. The stories of resilience she would include were not just theoretical constructs, but mirrors of her growth. More than ever, she felt the strong urge to share her journey to show her students that overcoming adversity was possible and that it didn't have to define their future. Ryan became instrumental. As they collaborated, each brainstorming session brightened her spirit. They discussed interactive presentations that depicted roadblocks not as endpoints, but as opportunities for creative solutions. The fusion of technology and education was her canvas, a chance to create a learning environment that championed authenticity over compliance. Yet, as she dove headfirst into these endeavors, doubts crept back in. Had she been too harsh in her message? Did she really have the right to demand accountability from Derek? It was a delicate balance to uphold, to express her truth while allowing space for growth and reconciliation. While she struggled internally, her responses were quelled in action. But the question lingered: how would Derek respond? Would he embrace growth and accountability, or would he default into defensiveness, rendering any possibility of closure unattainable? As she paced her living room, the rhythm of her footsteps suddenly echoed the urgency of her thoughts. The stakes felt heightened, and the need to reclaim her narrative left her feeling exposed yet emboldened. This moment was no longer about just her. It was about what she stood to accomplish in her career, a beacon of hope for others. And as she refocused on her platform, ready to sculpt it into a bastion of resilience, another message arrived. Not from Derek this time, but from an unexpected contact, an old colleague whom she had thought had long since forgotten her. The subject line read, "Opportunity knocks." A jolt of anticipation surged through her as she opened it. What new path could lie ahead, and how would this latest twist impact her journey towards self-discovery and empowerment? Her heart raced, with the possibility as the ground beneath her began to shift once again. The email from her former colleague, Janet, was brief yet electrifying. "I hope you're doing well. I've been thinking about an initiative we discussed a while ago. I'd love to reconnect. Let us grab coffee soon." The signature line "Opportunity knocks" echoed in her mind, a symphony of potential. She couldn't help but smile, even as trepidation threaded through her excitement. Reflecting on her half-forgotten dreams of innovation in education, she couldn't shake the feeling that this titillating invitation might be a game-changer. Janet had always been a forward thinker, a catalyst for motivation. What if this was the nudge she needed to exceed her own expectations? Could collaborating with someone like Janet help her forge paths she had not dared to imagine? Days passed, and their meeting materialized. They sat in the corner cafe, bustling with familiar faces, a world teeming with stories like her own. As she sipped her coffee, Sarah felt both exhilaration and hesitation swirling in her chest. "I've missed this," Janet said, leaning in, her eyes sparkling with ideas. "Remember when we talked about mentoring programs? What if we expanded that concept into a series of workshops focused on resilience and empowerment? An actual platform for teachers and students alike." Sarah's heart raced. "You mean something beyond the classroom? Like a movement?" She could feel the electricity of possibility pulsing in the air. This moment wasn't just a conversation. It was a kindling of a larger dream she had once considered unattainable. Exactly. We could blend theoretical knowledge with real-world application, utilize interdisciplinary approaches, and think about integrating technology to make it engaging for students. Janet's enthusiasm was contagious, casting shadows of doubt aside. Sarah added how imperative it was for students to tackle challenges not as roadblocks, but as launching pads for their future. As the dialogue unfolded, they drafted blueprints on napkins, transforming their cups into vessels of change. Ideas rolled forth unseasoned by fear, visions untethered to last year's insecurities. She saw herself in an entirely new light, a partner in creation, not a reluctant participant holding back. But as they exchanged ideas, another thought flickered, demanding confrontation. With every suggestion that sparked from Janet's lips, Sarah wondered if she was ready to risk her newfound voice, a voice that spoke truth and demanded accountability. The earlier messages from Derek still echoed. His vulnerabilities, his regrets, she could not afford to disregard them as mere noise. What if diving into this collaboration meant facing down unresolved feelings, resurrecting a past she thought she had put to rest? That night, as she scrolled through her phone, she stumbled upon an article on resilience in leadership. The author spoke about the transformative power of embracing discontent, of turning pain into productivity. The words resonated deeply. Perhaps confronting Derek had been only the beginning. What if she could channel everything her past struggles, present determination, and the potential her partnership with Janet unlocked into a self-driven venture that uplifted others? She typed an impulsive reply to Derek, venturing into the complexity of reclaiming her narrative. You were part of my story, but I'm still writing the chapters. Accountability leads to growth. Let us both work on our paths. Sighing, she hit send, the weight of her decision lighter, the path ahead a blend of potential and uncertainty. The next morning, she awoke to a notification, a reply from Derek. Her heart lurched. The course of her next steps would depend on his reaction, a pivotal moment that could clarify what lay ahead, a new collaboration, or the resurgence of obstacles she thought she had conquered. Which path would he choose, and how would his response dictate the next leg of her journey? The clock ticked ominously, and the narrative she had crafted began to call her back into its grasp, revealing possibilities she had yet to explore. Sarah's heart thudded in her chest as she unlocked her phone, her eyes glued to the familiar name appearing on the screen. The weight of Derek's decisions pressed down, his reply looming like an unresolved chord. Sarah, it read, simple yet loaded. I appreciate your honesty. I have been reflecting too. Perhaps it's time we took that honesty a step further. A mixture of relief and trepidation washed over her as she deciphered possibilities wrapped in his words. Was this his way of reaching out, or merely an acknowledgement of their shared history? With a deep breath, she leaned into her thoughts, attempting to sift through her emotions, a task that had often overwhelmed her in the past. In the following hours, Sarah immersed herself in planning for her and Janet's proposed initiative. With each diagram sketched and theme outlined, she felt threads of purpose tightening around her resolve. This was her moment to mold her uncertainties into a tangible force. Impulsively, she set aside any lingering doubt about Derek and focused on the opportunity before her. Eventually, it occurred to her that clarity on her feelings about Derek would provide the emotional landscape from which she could truly grow. She jotted down her emotions in her journal, allowing her pen to bleed words of struggle and resilience, thoughts that laid bare her fears and aspirations. Why was confronting the past so daunting? She wrote, could I truly move into new opportunities without addressing the shadows? The reflection ignited a spark. The realization was profound. Confronting Derek was not merely about reliving old sorrows. It was about understanding herself and allowing growth to flourish. As she concluded her journaling, she decided to catalog the ideas that had emerged during her meeting with Janet. She constructed a blueprint for their proposed workshops, focusing on individual stories that tied back to personal experiences of resilience and empowerment. She envisioned not just a curriculum, but a transformative journey that blended storytelling with actionable strategies, an approach aimed towards making students see the strength in their narratives. The collaboration with Janet felt like her stepping stone. Did this initiative signify her departure from uncertainty? Or was it a bridge into a landscape marked by both possibility and vulnerability? She typed sentences rapidly, lost in the flow of ideas, realizing that this endeavor became more than just professional. It illuminated her path of personal evolution. As the day waned into twilight, she offered a sympathetic smile to her reflection in the window, recognizing the confident woman staring back. But just as quickly, doubt crept in. What if their plans spiraled into chaos? What if she faltered under the weight of expectations? With those anxieties trailing close, her thoughts drifted back to Derek's message. Would a conversation with him clarify her feelings, or would it threaten to unravel the progress she felt she was making? Now, she had a chance to redefine her narrative, but could she be brave enough to do so? Determined, Sarah typed an acknowledgement back to Derek. Let us talk. It's time to face our past. She pressed send, the pulse of adrenaline igniting her senses. It was a choice ignited by an urge to reclaim her unfinished story, but it also pushed her toward an uneasy intersection of possibility and fear. A knock on her door pulled her from her thoughts. Janet was standing with a bright smile and the latest updates about potential funding for their workshops. Giddy excitement bubbled inside her, yet uncertainty loomed larger than ever. Assessing the opportunity ahead required more than enthusiasm. It demanded vulnerability and courage to face all facets of her past. In the rush of the moment, Sarah realized that the next chapter in her journey would hinge on the intersection of her commitment with Janet and the completion of her unfinished business with Derek. The air thickened with possibility, charged with tension. Would she summon the strength to embrace this unique dual journey towards self-fulfillment, or would she retreat back into the shadows, her decisions stretched out before her, ominous and tantalizing? How would she blend the indispensable truths from her past with the hope she was crafting for the future? The clock was ticking again, a reminder that the time had come to embark on this journey of clarity and courage. Yet even so, one question haunted her thoughts: was she ready to hear the truth of both her collaborations? The moment Janet stepped into Sarah's apartment, a shift occurred neither of them anticipated. The enthusiasm radiating from Janet's presence offered a much-needed counterpoint to Sarah's tangled emotions. As they settled into the living room, surrounded by sketches and notes, Sarah felt the weight of her choices pressing upon her, a paradox of hope and anxiety entwined. "Okay, so let's dive in," Janet exclaimed, spreading her materials across the coffee table. Each document had the potential to breathe life into their shared vision, yet every piece now felt like a reminder of what was at stake. Sarah leaned forward, her fingers nervously tracing the outline of her notes. They had to discuss funding opportunities that would elevate their workshops from mere ideas to tangible programs. Still, behind Janet's excitement, doubts began to nag at Sarah's mind. What if they succeeded? Would they be able to reach and inspire students? More importantly, what if Sarah's involvement faltered when the time came to deliver? "You seem distracted," Janet said, looking up from the paperwork, her voice tinged with concern. Sarah hesitated. This was not merely about funding. It was about confronting who she had been and who she aimed to become. "I am navigating some personal stuff," she finally admitted. That Janet's brow furrowed. "With Derek?" "Yeah," Sarah replied, not fully prepared to disclose the emotional upheaval swirling within. "I sent him a message. We're going to talk." "That's brave," Janet acknowledged. "But remember, you don't have to carry that burden alone. You've taken steps already." The reminder sharpened Sarah's focus. She needed to pull on the threads of courage she had woven since meeting Janet. The notion of taking part in research, crafting narratives of resilience, and exploring personal stories that couldn't just exist as concepts in her mind. They needed to synthesize into her reality. "Right?" Sarah whispered, grounding herself in the moment. "This initiative is about empowering others to share their truths while I'm figuring out mine." "Exactly." Janet's enthusiasm returned, her voice brightening the room. "Imagine the impact we can have. But it'll require you to be vulnerable, to share your journey, whatever it looks like." That task felt daunting. Could she seamlessly weave her challenges with Derek into the fabric of their workshops? Would her struggle resonate with the students they hoped to uplift? Doubt crept in again, but so did a flicker of determination. This was her moment, not only to guide others but to hold herself accountable for growth. They discussed practical strategies and ways to incorporate personal testimonials into their curriculum. Sarah's heart pinged with a new realization. Perhaps her unresolved feelings for Derek weren't just a burden. They could provide authenticity in her teaching. The complexities of her life experiences could form a bond with her future students, instilling in them a sense of empathy and resilience. "This might sound a bit unconventional," Sarah interjected, "but what if we shared snippets of our own experiences during the workshops? It could forge a connection, letting students know their feelings are valid." Janet paused, her eyes widening with realization. That could create such a strong foundation. It would challenge us to be honest in our journey, too. A gust of excitement tinged the air, but it was fleeting, overshadowed by the remnant unease about her forthcoming talk with Derek. What if this exploration opened up wounds rather than healing? Could these intertwined paths of her personal and professional ambitions coexist without colliding? After another round of brainstorming, Sarah's thoughts kept straying back to the looming conversation. Reconciling her past with her plans felt ever more necessary, yet anxiety surged again, blurring the lines of her confidence. In order for you to truly guide these students, Janet said as they wrapped up, her tone softer, you might have to lead yourself through your truth first. With those words echoing, Sarah recognized the magnitude of the journey ahead. In that pivotal moment, she understood that the path to clarity was as crucial as the outcome itself. Each step mattered, shopping the layers of her history and reinventing herself from within. As the night deepened and Janet prepared to leave, Sarah felt both anchored and adrift. One question pulsed through her thoughts louder than the rest. When would she confront Derek, and could she truly uncover her strength in doing so? The afternoon sun streamed through Sarah's kitchen window, casting warm patterns on the tiles. Today wasn't just any day. It was the day she had decided to meet Derek. The looming confrontation sat heavy in her chest, but there was an unmistakable thread of exhilaration weaving through her nerves. Gathering her resolve, she prepared both mentally and physically, ensuring she was not just addressing their relationship, but also embodying the strength she had begun to cultivate. She replayed Janet's words in her mind, particularly the importance of leading herself through her truth. That idea, while seemingly simplistic, had taken root as a complex challenge. How could she express the depth of her feelings about their past when her heart still trembled with fear? After all, this was not merely about resolution. It was about understanding who Sarah was now and how that woman fit into a world that had once felt so constricting. With a deep inhale, she pulled on a shirt that made her feel confident. It was liberating, this small act of choosing something for herself. It was a tangible representation of the changes she'd been surveying. Before heading out, she drafted a mental list, clarify her feelings, express her need for growth, and importantly, listen. The last part was crucial. Sarah often had trouble with that, focusing on her perspective while neglecting Derek's. This time would be different. She understood that if they were to find common ground, she needed to be receptive, even to the parts she feared most. The cafe they chose for their meeting was a favorite between them, its intimate ambience a backdrop to their shared laughter and dreams. Today, however, it felt different, charged with uncertainty. As she walked through the door, every sound seemed amplified, as if the bustling crowd was privy to her inner turmoil. When their eyes finally met, something within her flickered. Familiarity washed over them, but alongside it came an undercurrent of hesitation. "Hey," Derek greeted softly, his voice layered with simultaneous relief and apprehension, as if he had been waiting for this meeting as much as she had. "Hi," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. They settled into a booth together, the menu forgotten in favor of the conversation that loomed between them. "What did you want to talk about?" he asked, a cautious tone creeping into his words. Sarah took a moment, the weight of their relationship expanding around them, and she began to speak. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she started, allowing the words to flow even as her heart raced. "About us, about who I am now, and who I want to be." As she poured out her thoughts, her uncertainties, aspirations, and the journey she had ventured on in recent weeks, she noticed the way his expression shifted. He was listening intently, absorbing not just her words, but the gravity of their implications. This acknowledgement fueled something deep within her, pushing her to express even more vulnerably. But as she continued, uncertainty flooded her mind again. Would revealing her emotional struggles and personal evolution alienate him? Would he hold it against her, judge her for having changed? The part of her that had often recoiled from such emotional exposure hesitated. Then, a sudden thought struck. She remembered the collaborative workshops she was preparing with Janet, how opening up could foster connections and empathy. This was her life, and she needed to approach it with that same spirit. Resilience wasn't just a concept. It demanded action. "I think it's important that I share my truth, Derek. Not just about us, but about who I am becoming," she said, her voice firming up in direct correlation to her internal resolve. That he nodded, and she continued, "I'm ready to embrace vulnerability, not just with you, but with myself. I want to guide others by setting an example of being authentically human. But to do that, I have to be honest with you and with myself." But as she watched his face, a flicker of discomfort crossed his features. Was he willing to meet her vulnerability with his own? Could they both embrace the possibility of change in their relationship, or was this another unbridgeable gap between them? The cafe bustled around them, life continuing as Sarah awaited his response. Would they emerge from this conversation more connected or further apart? The moment hung thick in the air as Sarah felt the ground shift beneath them, the future uncertain yet brimming with potential. She realized this conversation was not just about closure, but about possibility, the potential for love, understanding, and personal growth. Just then, as Derek opened his mouth to respond, Sarah's phone buzzed insistently on the table. She glanced down, and there it was, a message from Janet, mirroring a vast interest. "I can't wait to hear how it went. Remember, no matter the outcome, this process is part of your journey." As Sarah made the connection between her two worlds, the personal and the professional, her heart raced again. What would the outcome be, and how would all their paths intertwine moving forward? As Derek took a deep breath, Sarah felt that familiar flutter of anxiety mixed with determination. The unfolding conversation mattered immensely for her personal growth and perhaps for them. He finally spoke, his voice both unsure and tinged with hope. "Sarah, I appreciate you sharing all of this. It's a lot. I've been feeling the distance too," he admitted, avoiding her gaze momentarily, focusing instead on the swirling patterns in the cafe's latte foam. "But I don't know if I can meet you where you are. You've changed so much, and honestly, I'm still trying to catch up." Her chest tightened. Was this the moment he would retreat into the safety of the past? Her heart pounded in response, but she steadied herself. "I understand. This hasn't been easy for either of us. The truth is, I don't want to be the person I was. I want to embrace this growth, but I also understand if you need time," she replied, allowing vulnerability to seep through her words. Sarah felt a surge of clarity wash over her as she spoke. With each syllable, she realized the importance of framing her evolution not as a separation from him, but as an invitation to grow alongside each other. "What if we take things slow? Step back, not out of fear, but to see if we can navigate together," she suggested, her voice resonating with sincerity. Derek looked up, his gaze meeting hers, uncertainty slowly melting away into something warmer. "I think I'd like that," he said tentatively. "I've got some things I need to work on too." She nodded, feeling relief wash over her. What started as a daunting meeting transformed into a new beginning of mutual exploration. They began discussing their growth in broader terms, sharing personal failures and dreams unspoken for too long. It was raw and truthful and absolutely necessary as they talked. Sarah found herself weaving her own aspirations into the fabric of their conversation. "I've been thinking about leading workshops, helping others navigate their own transformations. There is so much potential for growth within everyone, but it takes courage to embrace it." Derek's eyebrows raised slightly. "That sounds like a huge step for you. You're serious about this?" "Absolutely. I want to help people realize their own strengths, just like I've begun to," she remarked. Sarah could feel the conviction in her voice, urging both of them forward. Derek shifted in his seat, a hint of excitement twinkling in his eyes. "You've inspired me, you know. Maybe I could do something similar? I've always struggled with sharing my thoughts. For so long, I felt like I didn't measure up, not just in our relationship, but in life." Would he consider stepping into the arena of vulnerability she had begun to navigate? The thought sent a thrill through her. They were at the brink of discovery, now not just about each other, but about their own capabilities. As they finalized plans to cultivate these new directions in life, Sarah felt a dual thrill, her own path and the possibility of Derek finding his voice. Yet beneath the surface lingered an undercurrent of hesitation for lurking challenges. Would fears resurface, stifling their mutual progress? Would they be able to sustain this movement from both sides? Her phone buzzed once again, jolting her slightly. It was another message from Janet. "Remember, a transformation is like a tidal wave, powerful but unpredictable. Embrace every moment." As Sarah pondered the message, the reality struck her. They were indeed at the edge of something monumental, but uncertainty hovered like shadows in the corners of their conversation. The air tingled with unresolved tension, an invitation to question what lay ahead, stirring the ignition of personal development that remained unquenched. Would they embrace vulnerability, confront their fears, and truly emerge as the people they aspired to be? Or would their old habits pull them under, Sarah exhaled slowly, the cafe now buzzing with new energy, and the path ahead unfurling into both challenge and possibility. She felt the weight of expectation, but the depth of that connection with Derek signaled a shift, a step towards something extraordinary, a promise of growth intertwined. The moment was ripe with urgency, and she needed to decide. Would she fully commit to steering both their futures, or would self-doubt steer her away once more? The need to act was acute. The moment demanded courage. What was Sarah willing to risk for the sake of true fulfillment? In the weeks that followed her conversation with Derek, Sarah stepped boldly into a new phase of her life marked by autonomy and empowerment. Each day unfolded like a fresh page in a book of possibilities, and she found herself embracing the challenges that once loomed large. No longer shackled by her fears, she transformed her bitterness into a robust determination to educate not just her students, but also herself in the art of resilience. Her collaboration with Janet evolved into a thriving initiative called Empowered, a series of workshops designed to guide students through personal narratives of struggle and triumph. This innovative platform was a fusion of technology and education, where the learners became co-creators in a space promoting authenticity. Sarah's vision for Empowered crystallized, cementing her status as a thought leader in the education sector. She felt invigorated, transforming her classroom into a reflective sanctuary that mingled spirit with scholarship. Recognition came swiftly, as local media caught wind of her initiative, shedding light on her journey from an ordinary teacher to an extraordinary advocate for student empowerment. Interview requests piled up, and she was invited to share her story on a prominent podcast focused on educational reform. As she sat in front of the microphone, her voice resonated with confidence. She spoke candidly about overcoming self-doubt and channeling adversity into a force for growth, not just for herself, but for her students. Feedback from that episode revealed an overwhelming number of teachers inspired to follow her lead. Yet, amidst this newfound recognition, Sarah remained grounded in her roots. She continued to spend quality time with her father, who had been her steadfast supporter through every twist and turn. Watching the joy on his face as she recalled her achievements solidified her resolve. She was not only succeeding for herself, but for him and the countless students who relied on her insight. As her initiative gained traction, Sarah felt a sense of closure regarding Derek. They maintained an open line of communication, sharing updates on their individual journeys, proving that personal growth should never come at the cost of self-identity. Their relationship, once strained and overshadowed by betrayal, evolved into a healthy friendship founded on mutual respect. The moment she realized she could flourish without the weight of his past actions was liberating. It was the moment she truly conquered her own narrative. She proved to herself that she wouldn't be defined by her mistakes or anyone else's. The culminating moment of her transformation arrived as she prepared to launch a virtual summit for Empowered. The event promised to unite educators and students from across the nation, fostering workshops to illustrate the strength found in personal stories. On the day of the summit, just before taking the stage, Sarah gazed into the mirror, seeing a woman who had not just survived, but thrived. Gone were the insecurities, replaced instead with a solid confidence in what she offered the world. She stood before a virtual audience, their faces radiating hope and anticipation. Sarah spoke with an authority that had been forged out of perseverance. It was in that moment of teaching, guiding, and engaging that she realized she had achieved more than she ever set out to do. She had conquered her fears, demonstrated unprecedented resilience, and most importantly, reshaped her identity into one that was rooted in competence and self-growth. This was the moment she knew she wanted to share with everyone. Her journey from struggle to fulfillment was not merely a personal story. It was evidence that anyone could rewrite their path. Her achievement was not just a successful career change, but symbolized the power of self-discovery and the importance of leading with vulnerability. Now, it is your turn to join the movement of personal growth and empowerment. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire and transform. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support this channel. It makes a real difference for everyone exploring their journey. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's captivating transformation, Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this remarkable conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread the message of hope and resilience.